So I said, "Hey, Tom, man, great. That was a really funny exchange. Awesome shot. That was great. That's the moment of the match so far, and probably will be. But you split your pants." He goes, "Oh, I know I split my pants. I need to change." Then he goes behind the tee marker, which are about 4 feet high. Those tee markers that had all the advertisements on it, and he just drops trowel right there.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to In My Bag with Brian Jeffra. I am joined by Brian Anderson, TNT play-by-play announcer, and just an absolute fabulous job he did with the match. And that's what we're talking about today, is Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning versus Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady. Everybody should have watched it. A lot of people did watch it. It was a fabulous broadcast. And I want to jump right in, Brian, and ask you, how close was this thing to being called off on Sunday, given the weather, and why was it decided to push through that weather and go ahead with the event?
Well, great to be here, first of all, Bagman. I think it was a little bit in jeopardy mid-morning, but once it was determined that there was no electricity in the air, there was no lightning, and it was just a heavy rain. It was really warm, so the rain was significant. I think they got 14 inches in 24 hours when it was all said and done. But I think once it was decided that there's not lightning, the danger of lightning, then they would go ahead and play. And I give the players a lot of credit for that. There was no instance where they were talking about canceling, or the forecast for the Monday following was even worse. So I think that kind of took that off the table, and all the competitors we were all in the rain room together, and they were just, to a man, just like, "Oh man, this is for charity. We're going to go out there. We're going to get wet." I give Peyton Manning a lot of credit. He was the guy that came in just guns blazing. He was just in such a great mood and enthusiastic, and just really set the tone. Like, we're going to go get wet. We're going to make fools of ourselves, but we're going to have some fun. We're going to raise a lot of money. So it was probably discussed, but never close to being postponed or canceled. But had it been postponed or canceled, we had done a rehearsal day the day before Saturday. So we had about probably 2 hours of content that we could have aired that would have been really intriguing. And I think people would have enjoyed that too, because we did record maybe 4 or 5 holes of those 4 competitors playing, and with all of our equipment and the whole bit. I mean, we would have they did some editing, but it was ready to be aired. So we would have given you some content. It just wouldn't have been what we actually saw live.
Were they actually playing a match on Saturday? Because obviously we saw the preview pictures of it. So they were actually getting after it on Saturday.
Well, I mean, yes, they weren't playing the match with the charitable part of it, but they were playing their own games for sure. I mean, Phil's just crazy. Like, Phil comes up, you need an accountant to play golf with Phil, because he's got so many money games and all this stuff going on. But they definitely had their internal games, and they were competing, and they were getting used to our equipment too. That's why we had them out there. And once they finished maybe the 5th hole, we took all the equipment off them, and they just kept playing. They kept going out. And I mean, I saw Phil and Tiger both playing with different competitors, different players at Medalist Friday and Saturday. I think Phil probably played 27 or 36 holes each day leading up to it. I know Tom Brady was playing 27, 36 holes. He played probably maybe 18, I don't know, maybe 9 or 18 the morning before the match. He went out and played. So they were all getting into it, and totally like trying to learn the golf course and treating it like a competitive event. So that was actually really cool to see too. They were into it, all 4 of them.
That is, and you could tell it on the broadcast. It was cool to see how into it they were. And I actually am surprised, because I thought Tom Brady was one of those back 9 players. He got better on the back 9, but you're saying he had played 9 already. So maybe he's a back 27 player.
Maybe so. Maybe it's that 27th hole. Yeah, he was fine trying to find his swing. I mean, he's been training, getting ready for the NFL season now with the Buccaneers. And as he mentioned during the broadcast, I'm trying to win a Super Bowl here, Chuck. But he hasn't been playing much. He's a much better player than he showed. I mean, we've seen him play really well in the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Ams. He's a legit 7-8 handicap. He didn't look like it on Sunday until the back 9, but credit to him, man. He had that championship mentality. He took all the slings and arrows and all the bad play and figured it out. He holed out on 7, then got into that alternate shot. And he turned it on, man. He and Peyton both. They were great. They were great to work with. They were great to watch. It was cool to see them kind of get stripped down into an uncomfortable place on the golf course and have to figure it out like the rest of us. So it was a really interesting event. I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad it came across well, and I'm glad our technology worked more than anything else. We had a few glitches, but it was quite amazing that in that kind of rain that all of our stuff, minus the blimp and minus a few of the golf cart cameras, we actually had 4 cameras per cart. We were only able to use like 1 or 2 in each cart, but pretty much everything worked. And we were able to really show a side of these players and a side of golf and follow all the CDC protocols to a T. So it was a triumph for sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting back into some of the broadcast elements in a minute here. I want to know what happened after the match was over. You know, usually after these types of things, there's like a cocktail hours, there's like a little celebration. Obviously, during these times, it's very different. So what happened after the cameras turned off?
Well, you know, everybody got together from the competitors and then all their representatives and the folks that run the golf club. So the medalist people, you know, all the super, the GM, the president, you know, the people who were involved in that. There was no spectators at all. There were no members that were allowed on the property. So it was an intimate gathering. We were all invited from a TV perspective, but I did not go. We didn't go. I appreciate the invite, but and we all felt like that was kind of their time. You know, they were the stars of the show, and you know, everybody who had a finger in the pie, by the end of it, they had the whole hand in the pie. So that wasn't exactly the scene that any of us were looking for after being on the air for so long. And so we let them have that moment to themselves. And I hear JT went. I know he went to the event, and he's a member there. So I'm sure it was a great time. They said they had a blast, and good for them that they had the camaraderie to all come together afterwards and have a few laughs. And what a story. I mean, everybody's got a story who attended that from every perspective that you were in, including ours. And so they're going to have a unique story too. And I give those guys a ton of credit, man. It was really fun to watch them do their thing and to watch them and experience them collaborate with us as opposed to just us covering them and they do their own thing. It was a real collaboration between the competitors, the broadcasters, you know, all of our production staff. It was a really cool experience and something I haven't really experienced very often in my career in broadcasting.
That is cool. What do you mean when you say a collaboration? Were they telling you different ideas in terms of how they could communicate people they wanted to communicate, like the Chuck Tom Brady back and forth that you already mentioned? You know, talk a little bit more about what you mean by collaboration.
Well, and you know, not as far as content goes, not a lot of that. So a lot that was all spontaneous that came up. But I will say the planning to open up those windows, if you will, to have that kind of banter. So number one, you know, we had this idea that we would put carts in or cameras in the cart, and they were all for it. And they'd have these souped up carts. They totally took it to the next level. They tricked out their carts with these wraps, you know, these really cool art and their logos and their charities. So, you know, the players made that better for sure. And then our cameras, unfortunately, we couldn't use all 4. We had 16 cameras in the 4 carts, and it was going to be such a cool visual. Now we were able to use, for the most part, the one that shot directly over the steering wheel, and that gave us some great images, but it actually could have been a lot better, believe it or not. We used all the NASCAR rigs, and the same group that does NASCAR in their in-cart camera system, they were there. They were on site, so a lot of credit to them. But I think it's more about like, okay, the one club hole, for example, that was a collaborative idea. The long drives, the where to put certain competitions, the actual format itself. I mean, Phil and Tiger, and they're kind of creating this. And can we have these conversations? Would you wear an earpiece? Yes, we'll wear an earpiece, but how do we reconcile when we're swinging a golf club? So, you know, we're having conversations with athletes TV conversations that we've never had, things we talk about, like we would love to do this or that, this and that. And they were willing to do that. And, the technology held up. And so I'm hopeful that that's going to spur on more of this kind of interaction and this kind of access as our equipment gets better, more durable, smaller, less obtrusive. So those were the kind of moments. As far as content goes, every now and then, Phil would say, "Hey, I got something here. Would you come chat with me?" Or Brady would say, "Hey, I got something for Charles," or Charles would say that to them. Like, not only were they listening to us and we could interview them, but they were also listening to us and they could clap back at the announcers if they didn't like what they hear. And what athlete doesn't want to clap back at an announcer in real time? And that all showed up in that one exchange with Brady and Charles when he holed out at 7. So it was awesome that everything worked and everybody was on the same page, and it was just a really cool event to be a part of.
I agree completely. I loved the earpieces. I thought, and actually I spoke with Kyle Koster yesterday about that on our big lead broadcast, but I think the earpieces really should be used more often, especially in these types of events. Obviously you can't do it, you can't have Patrick Mahomes have an earpiece to Troy Aikman or something like that. But at the same time, I thought the earpieces were really cool, and I thought that interaction was actually what made it so personal. Even the Brooks Koepka Tom Brady thing, it was a little awkward, and like you could kind of feel like the tension mounting between them because Tom Brady had already gotten 100,000 off of him. But like that was cool. It felt real, and I think that should be used more often.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to get to a place where it's not so obtrusive. There's nobody's competing in a PGA Tour event is going to wear that pack. It's basically, like a walkie-talkie that's about that big, but it fits on the back of your belt, and the cable runs up and around your ear. So it's hard. I mean, it's doable, and they did it, but you would never compete that way. So, but it doesn't mean we couldn't create walk and talk stations. And this is something when I was at the Golf Channel, and we were the tree in the forest when I was at Golf Channel. I was covering Canadian Tour and Nationwide Tour back then it was known as, which is the developmental tour. And we kind of had a blank palette. And so we were able to do walk and talks. We were able to mic up players and have them navigate us through around. I'll never forget, there was a guy named John Mills. He played on the Canadian Tour, and he had a microphone on. We had the heart rate monitors going back then. I mean, we were doing a lot of this. We just couldn't get any traction because we didn't have the personalities, and the PGA Tour wouldn't let us do it. Canadian Tour would, and I felt, I mean, this is 15 years ago, 16 years ago, we were kind of breaking in and showing that we could get more intimate with the players in this regard. And, like a guy like John Mills, basically talking through every thought he had for 18 holes competing in a Canadian Tour event. It was fascinating. So we've done it before. I've done it before, and our crew at Golf Channel did it. It's hard to get the traction without the backing from the players. And hopefully this is going to, I don't know, I don't want to say inspire, but hopefully it's going to allow the rest of the leagues, the Tour, Major League Baseball, the NFL, to trust us more. The NBA is the best at it. LeBron James will wear a microphone during a game and during an NBA playoff game. And if he's going to do it, then the others will fall in line. You got to have your superstars willing to do it. So I hope they understand that this creates great access. It's huge entertainment. But we're not going to ask people to wear earpieces when they're competing. But it doesn't mean we can't put a confession station on a par 5 when there's usually a backup anyway. And while they're waiting on the tee, they can throw on a headset and have a quick chat with us. I mean, we were doing that stuff at Golf Channel in 2003 and 4 and 5. Nobody ever talks about it, but we did it, and there's proof of it. We can show them the tapes and say, this is a really cool experience, and it's been done. So I would love to get to that level.
Well, I just got an education because I thought this was really cool in the first time. I'd love to know when Justin Thomas called Charles Barkley fat ass on TV, what was your reaction?
Oh, it was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on cable and just working for Turner Sports. I think I've worked for a lot of networks, and there are some networks that would have been a big issue, but not Turner. And the nature of the event, it was like pushing up against a line but didn't cross over. I thought it was great. And Charles's reaction to it was so good. Remember, those two had spent a lot of time together earlier in the day for the bogey challenge. Charles was, had to make bogey or better, and JT was his coach. So they had literally spent, hours together, and they know each other anyway. But after Justin said that, and this is the genius of Charles Barkley always, that could have been an awkward moment. Instead, Charles just totally flipped it and said, "Hey, you can't call me fat on TV, Justin. That's bullying." And it just perfect, set the tone. Everybody got a laugh, and we moved on. And it's all good, man. I mean, Charles and Justin did a great job, totally out of their comfort zones for sure. And they both they were the stars of the show, and we knew they would be. We just had to make sure we cleared space for them to be and not be obtrusive over the commentary from the players. And they couldn't have been any better. Justin is an absolute gem. I mean, whenever he's done playing, or even while he's playing, he'll be one of the great golf analysts in the game. What he did Sunday and the way he invested in it and asked a bunch of questions and was part of our rehearsals and, was asking Trevor Immelman and me and Amanda Balionis, where do I get in? How does this work? And he was just absorbing all this information. And then as if you were giving him, instructions how to make this putt, he absorbed it all and executed it flawlessly. And that was a remarkable feat by a guy who's never done anything like this before.
Yeah, he definitely was one of the stars, especially when he was going after Immelman about the President's Cup. I like that a lot. You mentioned kind of that dynamic between them and getting out of the way. For you as a play-by-play announcer, what was it like having all of that star power plus, Tiger and Mickelson and Peyton and Brady all mic'd up? How do you kind of balance that?
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, first of all, it's an attitude. It's an attitude thing. You have to go into those with the notion of I must decrease. Right from the Bible, I must decrease so others can increase, and that's kind of one of my foundational statements in my whole life in general. And it specifically applies to this kind of event because you got alpha dogs everywhere. Trevor Immelman is a 2008 Masters champion. I mean, this guy's the captain of the international team at the President's Cup. And, he's kind of we're figuring out how much golf talk is there going to be. So you got Charles, you got JT, you got all the players, you got Amanda who's doing interviews. And so we have 5 announcers and 4 players, and everybody's got the mic. But to everybody's credit, and I credit Jeff Newbarth, our producer, and our director, Steve Bime. They did a fantastic job. Our crew is exceptional dealing with all the weather. But everybody just was pulling on the same rope. And we were operating on a template. We kind of had it mapped out each hole, what we would do on those particular holes, the various challenges, the promos, the telethon aspect of this, the charitable aspect. So we had the template, but inside the template was your freedom to be creative and bring something to the table. So my space in the template is much different than Trevor's and Charles and JT. So we all had, it's like a batting order, in a baseball lineup. Everybody has a specific role in the batting order. And when your time is at the plate, you've got to be able to deliver something. So there was a lot of hand signals. There was a lot of shushing. But everybody decreased when it was time to decrease, to let the others step into that window. And that's what I really love the most about the collaborative effort of it. And I'm not just talking about the broadcasters. That includes the competitors as well. The players knew, and Phil was kind of the one leading the charge. We really need to do a better job talking, communicating, and adding the quarterbacks was their idea. Brilliant. So then that created, because there's no caddies, that created some interaction. And, we kind of knew when those interactions were going to happen. I'll give you very specific examples. So just to make the point. So there's a lot of chatter on the tee boxes. Once the player goes into his pre-shot routine, the chatter usually stops. So if you go in real time, that's about 10 seconds where you can actually set up the hole, bring in Justin Thomas or Amanda, or have Charles say something, right? From my perspective. So when I would hear the chatter die down, and I'm literally like listening, chatter dies down, Phil goes into his pre-shot routine. I say, Trevor, big tee shot here. And he would come in with this golf knowledge about the hole or where he's aiming or trying to avoid the bunker to the left. Or maybe I'd look over at Charles and say, man, Brady could use something good here. And Charles would know that he's not giving golf analysis. He's going to say something funny or just be Charles Barkley, and JT the same way. So that's deep in the weeds, maybe more than you want to know. I know this is like a long form podcast, but that's basically the point. Is you pick your windows, and we know what the windows are, and then it's kind of up to the producer Jeff, and it's up to me to like quarterback these things on who's going to talk and how it's going to go down, and then what kind of interaction we could have. And everybody was doing that. And remember, to my left is Charles Barkley. He's 10 feet away from me. Trevor's 10 feet away to my right. So I'm having to point, or you two talk. You might remember there was one interview with Tiger Woods where basically the IFBs, they would tell you, okay, Tiger's IFB is open, talk to him now. And the first time I did it, he didn't respond. It didn't work. His equipment was down. But the second time, it just worked well that Charles had just been talking about Tiger. So I just pointed to Charles, and Charles took off, and he and Tiger had a great conversation. And that's kind of like the whole day was like that, trying to find your windows. But unlike a normal broadcast, make sure that you're constantly sitting in the on-deck circle mentally, waiting for the players' content and their microphones and their conversations to stop. Then we come in. So that's the basic rhythm of it.
It was cool. And actually, you didn't have that much time, because a lot of the times Peyton or Tom Brady or Mickelson were still talking smack to the person literally right as they were about to swing, which I thought was very much just like a couple of buddies playing, which I thought was cool. Was there a moment that was bleeped out that you wish could have made it to the
no. No. There was a lot of F-bombs, man, I'm telling you, and we had a 10-second delay on it. So, obviously we can't put all of that on as much as I'd love to. And I think it's funny. I mean, you'd still have to protect the young ears out there, and it is a bit of a family show, but there was nothing that was left off. I mean, everything was live. There was everything that happened, and we showed it. We didn't edit anything. We didn't post-produce anything. It was all as it was. So the only thing I wish we would have had, a better weather would have allowed us to, I think, do even a better job with the technology and make it more intimate. And then we had the blimp too, the Goodyear blimp was there. It couldn't even fly. So that was a shame, because that would have, given us that big, broad sense of medalist and the bigness of it. We didn't have that, but it's okay. It was good. I mean, we pulled it off, and I'm shocked all the equipment worked, and I'm shocked the truck didn't crash, the power didn't go down. I'm shocked our booth didn't blow down at one point. I thought we were all going down at one point. So everything worked just good enough to pull off a 5-hour broadcast, 5.5 hours, however long we were on the air.
You're really good at these transitions. My next question was going to be that you tweeted and posted on Instagram that it was a miracle that this broadcast got off. What was the hardest part about getting this broadcast done? And what do you mean when you say it was a miracle that it actually happened?
Yeah, a technological miracle, I think, because, we've come such a long way with our technology. It's so much more durable. It's smaller. And we're putting a lot of RF wireless equipment out there. So, for an example, the Brady scene when he holes out and Charles is in his ear. Now, if you can just think of it like a movie scene, right, and think of that whole sequence, there are no people around Tom Brady. He's being seen on a golf cart camera, which there is operated back, on another part of the golf course robotically. He's being heard on a wireless microphone. He's hearing us on a wireless earpiece, which we call an IFB. So all of that technology, and yet Tom Brady, if you put yourself in his position, he's looking around. There's nobody around him, and to be able to pull that off, and that's the way we had to do it with the CDC protocols in place. Like, we can't have all these camera guys and all these audio guys with microphones, sticking microphones in there close. You can't have that. We couldn't have it. And so to be able to pull that off, that's what I was referencing in my tweet about. It's a miracle that our audio crew, all the people who are involved in like the RF, which is, the wireless frequencies, you set up a tower in a compound and all those little signals bounce into that tower and then go on the air. Basically, this is all wireless equipment. And we don't have the manpower because we had to keep the numbers down. If something breaks, you're going to send a team of technicians to go fix stuff. We're talking about a couple of guys, man, and they're running around like crazy, and the players are hitting the ball all over the grid, and they're hundreds of yards from each other on the same hole at times. So I just thought, I was just waiting for everything to just stop working, and we were just going to have to call it from the booth. And even our headsets, I was shocked those things held up, and they wrapped a big plastic wrap around our booth, even because the rain's coming in sideways.
Yeah,
it's an open air booth, and so all of it, man, it was a recipe for disaster. But every person out there, including every member of our crew, who was in charge of whatever they were in charge of, they made their station work, and including our booth and those carts, and they just made it work. And that's what was so cool about it from a nerdy tech standpoint. And that's kind of where I live, in those spaces. I love that. I love technology and making it all work. And the fact that it all worked, man, it was a miracle. I told our engineer, after, the guy who kind of controls all of that, like, what you just pulled off, you should get a parking spot and a raise for the rest of the year. That was phenomenal.
it really was. I thought everybody did a fantastic job with it. And considering, I know there was a lot of planning that went into it, but considering that you had minimal time, that you really couldn't predict that kind of weather. I just really enjoyed the broadcast, and I was gushing about it yesterday, as I said to Kyle.
Oh, well, thank you.
I want to step back to the Tom Brady shot. He makes that shot. It was crazy to me, because on a PGA Tour event where you have professionals doing it, you might get 3 of those shots a day, and you're talking about like 120 players.
Right.
It was just such a shocking moment, and the fact that he was able to do that. Did he say anything to you, either in the lead up, or to any member of the team, either the lead up about his game or afterwards about his game? Because he was a real sport about the whole thing. And I was trying to explain to Kyle yesterday that playing golf bad in front of friends, the pit in your stomach is just like, it's the horrendous feeling. I could only imagine with Tom Brady, a person who's, crafted this amazing football career, and seems like a really great person off the field, and has this like persona that he does everything perfectly. Did he say anything about not that shot specifically, but about how he was playing, about how he felt about that? Because, as I said, I would have been like this, and somehow the guy makes the 150-yard shot,
Yeah, I mean, I think the word of the day for me about the whole experience was relatable, and I think Tom leaned into that. I mean, he's the most kind of put together, perfect guy from what we see publicly. And, the guy's won 6 Super Bowls. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. And, he doesn't make many mistakes, and he's totally out of his element. I think he leaned into that. I mean, there was a couple of early scenes. Remember, Tom was counting his strokes on his hand. Like, who hasn't done that,
Yeah.
And so he became so much more relatable. But then you saw, like, the greatness of Tom Brady when he makes this shot. He gets heckled by Charles. Charles is basically wanting to now play him and give him strokes.
1 second before he took that shot.
So Charles is totally on his case, man. And he's like, oh, I could beat you. I'm going to have to give you strokes, Tom. And then Tom makes this shot, and most people would kind of get loud and react, and he just stood there just steely-eyed, calm, just like he'd thrown a touchdown pass to win a Super Bowl. And that's when you saw, like, whoa, we're dealing with greatness here. And that was cool, like, to be able to go back and forth between those personalities. And then, like, literally a few minutes later, on that same hole, as he's bending down to pick up the ball out of the hole, he splits his pants. And it's there for everybody to see. And so I'll give you a quick story. I'll let you in a little secret here. So we go to commercial, and I asked to be opened up to Tom, because I saw the split in his pants, and we just had this great moment, and I just was curious to see, do you want to address this? Do we want to have fun with it? Whatever. So I said, hey, Tom, man, great. that was a really funny exchange. Awesome shot. That was great. That's the moment of the match so far, and probably will be. But you split your pants. He goes, "Oh, I know I split my pants. I need to change." And I said, "Do you want us to talk about that or reference that and have fun with it, or do you want me to leave it alone?" Because I didn't want to embarrass him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, no way." He goes, "Absolutely bring it up. That's great. That's funny. That's no big deal." Then he goes behind the T marker, which are about, 4 feet high, those T markers that had all the advertisements on it. And he just drops trowel right there and puts on his rain pants. So, we came back from break. We did a whole bit. We talked about his pants. He was great. That's the kind of stuff, man. I love that about these athletes, and especially the ones that, Tom takes himself really seriously, and he's earned that right. But in this kind of event, he totally was like, "Oh man, let's have some fun with it." And he made fun of himself on Twitter, and I think he said something like social distancing with his pants, which is great, like perfect.
So he
line.
actually took off his pants, because usually with rain pants, you just put them on over the pants.
Yeah, he wasn't going for that. He took the pants off, and then, but he had like the tights on, and
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't like, it wasn't a big deal. He didn't have like the tidy whities on or anything, but he took his pants off. We didn't shoot any of that, obviously.
No, but of course not. But you're a golfer. Usually when I put on rain pants in the middle of a round, I'm just putting them over my pants. It's just interesting that he would go that route.
Well, remember, it was hot. It was hot there.
No,
It was raining, but it's hot and humid. So that would have been a little much, and
Yes.
he's got the knee brace going. And so I think he was much more comfortable when he put the rain pants on, and he was much drier, obviously.
And he was ahead of the curve.
Manning didn't even bring any rain. He didn't bring any rain gear at all. He was like, "It's never going to rain in Florida." So he just toughed it out. I think he had a jacket on briefly, but one he just bought from the pro shop, and he just wore it. He just took it like a man. He was soaking wet. Funny.
Oh, I'm sure he changed those shoes right away. I noticed that he didn't put on the pants. But you know what? He's like an offensive lineman. He's just going to tough it out.
Yeah.
Well, that
and
was
Brady
awesome
called him
insight.
a dome quarterback. Remember, he had dropped a dome quarterback on him in the pregame. That was one of the funniest bits, by the way, when Amanda walked around the practice tee and it's driving rain, and all those guys are hitting shots and just trying to make this normal. That was awesome. And Brady called him a dome quarterback. It's beautiful. Funny.
Oh, I love the whole thing. Awesome. Well, we're going to play a fun game that we like to play here on In My Bag. It's called Would You Rather. So I'm going to give you 2 different situations. You're going to say, would you rather do one or would you rather do the other? In keeping with the golf theme, I know you do a lot more, but we're going to focus on golf today. The first one is, would you rather call play-by-play of Tom Brady playing golf or Charles Barkley?
Oh, Charles Barkley for sure. And hopefully, and with a microphone and an earpiece in, absolutely. No brainer.
Good call. I think I would go the same way, but I had a lot of fun watching that. Would you rather get a playing lesson from Phil Mickelson or Tiger Woods?
Whew. Probably Phil. I think Phil would totally engage and understand your challenges and limitations. Tiger would give you a few whacks at it, and then, he's on such a level that he can't comprehend the struggle that, and I'm a 5 handicap, but he couldn't comprehend the struggle that we're all going through. And so, yeah, probably Phil, although Phil's pretty process oriented. He got in pretty deep there with Tom Brady. Talk about 2 process guys going through a process, which was fascinating television. But yeah, he might swim around in your head a little bit. I'll go with Phil.
Very good. We talked about it earlier, and I'm going to ask you it again. Would you rather gamble in a golf match against Phil Mickelson or Tiger Woods?
Neither.
You're getting strokes.
They're both relentless. No way. I'm not even going there. I wouldn't gamble on who can be first to the parking lot with those 2 guys, man. Golfers, first of all, are all degenerate gamblers, just to start with. And those guys are on another level of gamblers because they have such talent. And it's not even about the money all the time. It's just about like these random things that they make you do if you lose, and forget that, man. I'm no chance I'm engaging with those 2 on any level.
What's a random thing that you would have to do if you lost a bet?
Well, I know the game we used to play a lot, and we still do, is like if you lost a bet, and I think I got that from Phil maybe, but if you lose a bet, you have to, if it was a team game, you hold your partner's hand afterwards. You have to hold his hand or her hand, and you have to say, you guys are better than us. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that, man. So those are the little things. You know what? They had a bunch of little things like that planned, and I never really followed up, or we never got to it. But Tiger and Phil had probably 4 or 5 things that they were going to throw at each other, and it had nothing to do with money. It was all just, you have to do this for me. And I was privy to one thing that I can't share, which would have been incredible, but they never went there. So I want to follow up at some point and find out why that got awkward or whatever, you know, but it never happened. But they definitely had it planned that they were going to throw out a few of these little exchanges. You know, I know there was one that was being discussed that if you lost the hole, you had to bend the knee. You know, you had to get on a knee and say you're better than me on that hole or whatever it was. But that wasn't happening, I guess.
But there's another one. But there's another one that you can't tell us about. I'm really wanting to know what that is.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just set that up. But
no,
yeah, there's no chance. No chance I can tell you about that one. But it would have been
totally
great.
Fun.
And I'm sure maybe they did have it and they just didn't do it publicly. And maybe that's something that they will resolve on their own. But yeah.
I'll remember that for the next event that I'm at. I'm going to try and ask them. We'll see if it comes up.
Yes. See if it comes up. Probably Phil may spill it first. Tiger will go to his grave with it, I'm sure. But you never know. Phil may sling that out there somewhere. But it's pretty funny.
All right, back to would you rather. Would you rather eat a hot dog or a granola bar at the turn? Are you more of a hot dog or granola bar kind of guy?
Granola bar. Listen, I'm a baseball announcer for 25 years now. I did 9 years of minor league baseball. I literally have probably eaten more hot dogs than any, 48-year-old on the face of the earth. So, no, I'm not eating any more hot dogs at this point.
Would you rather play Augusta National once or Pine Valley 5 times?
I've played Pine Valley. I've never played Augusta National. It's a good question. I think I'd rather play Augusta National once.
Very good. Last question. Would you rather have Justin Thomas as your playing partner in the Ryder Cup or Ian Poulter?
I'm going USA all the way. Going JT.
I knew it.
But both would be awesome, wouldn't they? So good.
I knew it. They're both so amazing. All right, that concludes Would You Rather. Thank you. There were some really good parts in there. The last part that we like to do here is a segment called New to Wiki. And I've gone through your Wikipedia page, and I'm wondering if there's something cool about you that's not on your Wikipedia page that you think should be on your Wikipedia page.
Oh, I've never read my Wikipedia page. I would say never, but not in a while.
Yeah.
I feel like people can just write anything on a Wikipedia page, right? So
it seemed like
I remember
everything. Go ahead.
Was it legit? I hope it's legit.
I
remember one year I called the MLB postseason one year, and I remember somebody went in and on an entry and said, Brian Anderson, the announcer who keeps calling Chase Utley Chase Ugly. And there was like 10 entries. There he goes again. He thinks Chase Utley is ugly, and he keeps calling him. It was obviously a joke, but
yeah,
I just like, who would do that? How can you actually just go on and write that? And of course, I didn't call him Chase Ugly, but anyway. So something that's, I don't know what's on it right now, but I'm guessing that what is not on it is that I used to be a handheld cameraman. So I was a television cameraman when I was in college, and maybe the first 4 or 5 years after college when I was into my professional radio broadcasting career doing minor league baseball. In the off seasons, I would work for a golf course. So I worked as a pro shop clerk that by day. And then at night, I was a handheld cameraman. I did, a lot of sporting events, college football, and I did a lot of San Antonio Spurs games. That's where I lived back then. And a lot of talent shows. Matter of fact, here's a good one for you, Bag. So the last performance that Selena, you remember Selena, the Tejano music star who was murdered tragically? It was a horrible story. I was the handheld cameraman for her last performance, her last live performance. And so that's a trivia question. That was at the Alamo Dome back then. So Yep, handheld cameraman. I did handheld for Pernell Whitaker, Cesar, Chavez Whitaker, the big fight in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. Huge fight that ended up on Sports Illustrated. So yeah, I did a lot of those events. Probably doesn't know that.
That was not on your Wikipedia page. It absolutely was
Good.
not.
Are you going to go make an entry now? Because anybody can go.
That's why I do this, because I like to add to people's Wikipedia pages about things that they actually care
scary.
about. No, but that's very interesting and very cool how your kind of career progressed, for sure. And if you want to know more about Brian Anderson's career, we actually had him on for Press Pass in April, so you can check that out. It was a great interview with Kyle Koster. But for Brian, this is Brian, aka Bag. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Anderson. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for sticking around and listening to this edition of In My Bag.